Vanakkam, everyone. This is TJ Thinakaran, and I am excited to be a part of Humans of Telecom.
Hey everyone, a very warm welcome to Humans of Telecom, the Unplugged podcast. This is your host Anurag Aggarwal, Chief Revenue Officer at GMS. As you all know, this podcast takes you behind the scenes of the fast-paced world of telecom and showcases the human side of some of the most well-known individuals within this industry. And our guest today is one such person who has worn so many different hats that it's a challenge to keep up with him. Whether it's kickstarting numerous successful ventures, serving as a board advisor to multiple organizations, holding C suite positions, and even being a lecturer, this man truly packs a punch into a single human being. Yet, when you meet this individual, his simplicity and humility leaves you amazed at how comfortable he makes you feel when you get into a discussion with him. And finally, for me, his roots go back into my country, which makes this conversation that much more special. So, please join me in welcoming TJ Thinakaran, founder and CEO at CasselRoad Consulting. TJ, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this journey. We'd love to hear more about you. Which part of the world do you belong to? And from where are you joining this podcast today?
Thank you for having me on Anurag. I was born in New Delhi, India, but I am speaking to you today from Los Angeles, California.
Oh, that's interesting. So, TJ, not only do you come from my country, you literally come from my city. That makes it so much more special for me.
Yes.
So, TJ, let's start with a very basic question. Since I know you're from down south of India, so while you have a very simple acronym, I'm sure that opens up into a bigger long form name. So, what does TJ in TJ Thinakaran stand for?
So, my full name is Jagannathan Dinagaran. And even back in India, it was a mouthful for my friends to pronounce. And as you know, Anurag, I come from South. My dad is from Tamil Nadu. My mom's from Delhi. I was an army brat, so I grew up. My dad was retired as a colonel in the Indian Army before he immigrated to the U.S. But everyone would call me TJ because in the South, as you know, we put our last name before our surname. So when I came to the States and, my name was just as long and it didn't get any shorter, I just decided to stick with TJ as a short form for people to call me. So it's just kind of stuck since then.
Interesting. So that's a cool acronym to have. So maybe at some point in life, I also might shift to AA.
Well, I can tell you, as you know, the name has very lofty ambitions, right? King of the world, a ray of the sun. My parents really have higher hopes for me, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think you are quite living up to it, my friend. So I think that's amazing. So, on that note, let's hear more about your journey. So, how did a boy who started his life in Delhi end up in Los Angeles? While I know you briefly mentioned that your father shifted from India to the US, but how has your journey been? And at what point did you get into telecom? How has the journey been so far for TJ?
The journey has been amazing, and as much as the journey of the world spanning immigrant is kind of very often told, it's unique to every person who lives it. I came to the States just before my 18th birthday, went to college, first for a short time in Atlanta, and then went to UC Irvine, which is where I met my future co-founders, who were also all Indian as well, and graduated, worked for IBM for 6 years, got my green card, and then was finally free to pursue my dreams. And I like to call myself a accidental telecom guy because in 2006, 2007, the world was kind of playing around with open SIPs and the telco networks were opening up. And all you needed to know was how to write software to send a phone call. So you didn't need specialized hardware or anything like that. And we were just tinkering, and Vijesh, Puneet, Dinesh, and Kamneev were already kind of working at it for about a year until I came in and we decided to start what was then Callfire, then now is Easy Texting.
Interesting. I think it equally applies for me and so many guests who I've had on the show that we've all been accidental entrants into the telecom space, definitely into this CPaaS and messaging and this enterprise communication space. I think many of us didn't foresee that that's where we'll be getting into. But within this journey of yours, and today, you found Castle Road Consulting. I'm sure it's been a very eventful career for you so far. If I ask you for one moment which is extremely memorable or impactful, which would that one moment be?
The one personal moment would be when we made our first full time offer. This is around 2009. So we'd been in business, we'd been not raised any money, reinvesting all the profits back in the business because we were all single, just working uh, because it was a lot of fun and we were having a lot of success. We made our first hire, who at that point was working as a contractor for us, and he was also twice our age. We were all in our 20s, and he was in his early 50s at that time, and he had some very severe health issues. He had quadruple bypass surgery, and I remember Vijesh and I were sitting in the conference room. We called him in, and we made him a full time employment offer. And part of the perk we told him was the company will pay for all of his health insurance benefits. And at that time, we didn't even know what we were signing up for, as later on we would find out. But it's kind of burned in my head, that visual, like the first thing. This is a man who had gone through quadruple bypass surgery, but not seen a doctor because in the US it's very expensive to self fund your healthcare, so to speak, um, in almost 6 years, right? And you have to keep in mind this is 2008, 2009, when the economy was in shambles, right? And the first thing he does, he gets out of the conference room and picks up the phone and calls his doctor to set up his health checkup for his heart. Right? This is a man who hadn't seen the doctor for 6 years, and the moment he knew that the company was going to pay for it, he could actually afford it. And that to me was like very personal, because that's when you're changing people's lives. And so, yeah, there have been a lot of founding moments and special moments since then, but that's one that sticks with me.
Interesting. I can totally understand that, from as I say, for example, in India, rather than being an employment seeker, be an employment generator. And I can totally understand that, for an entrepreneur, when it comes down to the fact that you're moving beyond your founders and taking the responsibility of other people on yourself, it's something which can be deeply impactful, because that's just a different level of responsibility you're going into. You're being responsible for another human being. So I think I can totally understand. Let's hope sometime in life, even I get onto that journey, and even I try to get to have people on board where I also take up that responsibility.
Well, Anurag, I know this is supposed to be where I'm talking about me, but I do want to bring up the fact that this podcast is been perhaps the most humanizing sources of motivation that I've heard in the last year or so. So you are influencing people's hearts and minds and creating a sense of connection and the common thread that we all share. Because not all of us agree on all things all the time, but ultimately you're helping us humanize each other. And thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I'm just trying my bit, and I'm glad that people of the industry actually find some connection with it and they resonate with it. So I'm more than happy with that. So thank you so much. But yeah, getting back to you now. So let's hear more about the human side of TJ. So, TJ, while you've told us something which is very impactful and memorable, but while so many of us know you, if there is something that we don't know about you, something shocking that no one knows about TJ, what could that one thing be?
Um, that I really love yoga, and I did not pick it up until I was 30 years of age, sitting in Santa Monica, watching every third person with a yoga mat. So growing up in India, I ignored it, didn't care for it, and then I came to a point where I was practicing yoga 5 times a week.
Interesting. I can understand that, because this is something we are often told that yoga, which incidentally originates from India, is something which is so deeply imbibed in the culture of so many Western countries, and especially the US. and we see them adopting it and often valuing it more than we do in our own country. But good. So, do you still practice it on a regular basis? Is that a part of your lifestyle now?
Yes, at home. So my wife is a yoga teacher. So we actually, she was my yoga teacher. Now, this may sound like I found my wife and then I found yoga. No, that's not what happened. I found yoga and then yoga gave me my life partner. But yes, I do practice at home, especially during thanks to the pandemic. I had to build a home practice. So me and my wife and I do like a vinyasa flow a couple of times a week.
Amazing. So that's nice. So the side effects of yoga went beyond health to a lot more personal enrichment. That's amazing.
Yep.
Awesome. And so while you said about yoga, but I see that there's so much of energy and passion inside you, especially in all our interactions. I've noticed that. So, what exactly does TJ do to recharge himself? What are your passions or likings or something that you do that's unique to you?
Well, I'm a new dad. I have a 4 year old, and nobody will like a 4 year old is an energizer money, and so you have to be one yourself. And spending time with him is honestly very energizing. It actually makes me way more focused on my work because there is has to be a an end time to your work time because you have a kid. Most of us work from home who's at the time that you promised is waiting outside the door, yelling at the top of his voice, saying, "Dad, will you play with me?" So not only do you have to do your work with focus, intention, and in the time allocated, but you have to show up with all your energy. So that's what I do for my work, for my fun, like is to recharge, is to spend time with my son.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes, for sure. Having a kid around you will be the perfect shot in the arm to keep you absolutely energized and on your toes. All right. And on that note, we move to another section where we play a game. So this has been a super popular one, and I've generally not been good at it, and the guest has taken me for a ride. So let's see how it goes today. So this is where I ask the guest to tell me two truths and a lie, and I'll try and guess which one is a lie. And I'll hope that all the statements are so exotic and interesting that it's really difficult to make out which one is which. But yeah, would you have three such statements for us today?
Yes, I do.
All right, let's hear them.
So the first one, I once practiced in the same yoga class as Gabrielle Anwar of the Center for Women fame. She was practicing yoga in a mat next to me. That's number one. Number two, I once sat next to Larry David on a plane. And number three, I have slept through an emergency landing.
Okay, I must say all three are equally interesting, and I'm really hoping all of them are truth. So the first one was that you said that you were practicing yoga near Gabrielle Anwar, and given the city which you hail from at the moment, I don't find that very unbelievable. Similarly, I would imagine that getting a chance to sit next to Larry David, and that would be fantastic. I hope that's a truth. We'd love to hear more about it. And the third one is that you slept through an emergency landing. So while I'd love to hilariously believe that that's also a truth, but I'll take my chance and I'll say the third one is a lie and the first two are truths. So am I right out here?
You're wrong. I have not sat next to Larry David on a plane.
That would have been an interesting one. So are you saying you're such a tight sleeper that you actually went through an entire an emergency landing and you didn't realize that that's what's happening?
Yeah, so this was when I was traveling for IBM as a consultant, and you basically are on a plane every week, and it was a red eye. We took off from Salt Lake City going down to Phoenix, and I was so exhausted that the moment I clipped on my seatbelt, I was out. I was sleeping, and I next time I woke up was actually when the plane landed, and I woke up and I was like, "Whoa, that was a short flight. I was out for that long." And I get out, thank the flight attendant, and which now explains why she was giving me that puzzled look. And I walk out to the jetway, and it's like, wait, I never left Salt Lake City. And apparently, some sort of cabin pressure sensor was going off on the plane, and the pilot decided to return back and declare an emergency and return back. So that's my story.
Okay, that's hilarious. So, so that means I can understand one thing is that you sleep through it, but the other funny thing is that after that you even deboarded, and all that while you didn't realize that you were getting off in the same place, huh?
Yep. Yep. In my defense, it was nighttime. So I'm like, okay, Salt Lake City and Albuquerque are kind of the same like night profile. But yes. And, I felt badly because maybe the flight attendant thought I was mocking her by like being so earnest in my thank you. But that's truth.
Interesting. And the story about doing yoga in the same place as Gabrielle Anwar. Well, I do hope that the yoga instructor wasn't your wife, and I hope she wasn't giving you dirty looks for looking at Gabrielle instead of focusing on your yoga. So, what was that story about?
No, that definitely she was in the class, of course, but she actually pointed out, she's like, because Gabrielle, to her credit, doesn't make a big deal at all about it. She just comes and does her job, and so I never noticed her until my wife pointed out, or then girlfriend pointed out that that's Gabrielle Anwar. I'm like, oh, okay.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that's the fun of being in a place like LA. You never know who you bump into, which celebrity in which coffee shop, or, just down the road anywhere. All right. Okay. And on that note, the last question of this section, if there's one thing that TJ could change about his life, what would that one thing be?
Honestly, at this point, I feel blessed that I wouldn't change anything except I think fighting time and time management has always been a challenge of mine. I'm always optimistic about how much I can get done in a day. And so if there is any hack that you have or your listeners have about how to get more juice out of the day, I'm happy to hear those suggestions.
Well, TJ, I think that's an everlasting struggle which we all are facing and coping with every day of our lives. So if you do find the mantra, do share with all our listeners here, please. And on that note, we come to our final question, our sign off section. What does being human mean to you? What sort of a human being would you want the world to remember you as?
I think someone who loved to connect people and connect with people. That would be something that's very important to me. And this is a little bit more personal than maybe I intended to be. But in the pandemic, so I'd almost thought I would quit messaging. By the end of 2019, I thought I had had enough of CPaaS, messaging, telco, and I wanted to try new things. And I had a health scare, a health challenge in the middle of the pandemic that kind of reset my perspective on life. And I realized I actually love connecting with people. I love messaging. I love everything about it. And that's what I would like to think people remember me by is someone who loved to connect with people, connect people to each other. That's part of the reason why I love doing all the conferences that I do is for me, it's like a game of chess, connecting talent to the right seat and making sure the audience is feeling engaged, informed, and entertained.
Wonderful. I think once again, you are quite living up to this standard. And I think I have seen you in conferences, and I was glad to meet you recently as well in the US. And I definitely feel that you're doing a wonderful job at connecting people and making sure that those connections are meaningful and impactful. And one stays connected with you in the long run. So thank you so much for being a part of this industry. And I do hope that our connection stays strong and we do find future endeavors where we can cross paths again. So thanks a lot for that.
Thank you. Same here, Anurag. And thank you for having me. And thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful. So thanks a lot, TJ. And to all our wonderful listeners here, thanks a lot for tuning into the show. We hope this episode gave you a good glimpse of the human side of TJ Thinakaran, a Delhi boy hailing from India who's now shifted all across the world to the wonderful land of LA in the US. Someone who's been fortunate enough to have met his future business partners in college and his future life partner in yoga. A father to a 4-year-old who finds his passion and energy through his son. And finally, someone who loves connecting with people and forms such meaningful and impactful connections that one can never forget this wonderful human being. That for us is TJ Thinakaran. So, if you enjoyed today's episode, do stay tuned in. because we shall soon be releasing yet another episode and another compelling story from the telecom space. And do follow the podcast on your preferred streaming channel. On behalf of Humans of Telecom, this is your host Anurag Aggarwal signing off for now. Take care.